Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Meds and Magic. It's me, Samantha, and I'm so excited to have you on this episode as we dive in to talk about something that's not often talked about, but it's it's a shame because it is literally a part of the human experience, which is grief, loss, and how to navigate that and how to make meaning out of some of our deepest, darkest pain. This episode, From Fear to Freedom, how grief can guide us back to wholeness. So, today we're going to explore just the sacred purpose of fear and grief and how they can be portals into deeper healing and expanded versions of ourselves. And so before we get started, I just want to invite you to ground yourself in this moment. We're going to just take a 1 minute drop in. Wherever you are, I just want you to focus on your breath and your breathing. Maybe you'll put your hands on your chest and connect with your heart. Take 3 slow breaths. And as you continue to listen, I want you to take notice of what you're feeling. And whatever arises, let it be information. Let it be data. Let your emotions be a roadmap for you to investigate. Become the inquirer of your own internal world. And resist the temptation to judge. Be compassionate with yourself and withhold judgment for whatever arises as we dive in. Our goal isn't to escape the fear, is it to escape the grief, but to interpret the data that they're trying to convey, to understand their wisdom and see that wisdom for what it is. So I want to start by just talking about a story. I recently had some grief in my life. I lost a dear friend a few months ago from breast cancer. And what's so interesting about her, our relationship in experiencing that loss is not only the sense of loss from losing a friend, but also how it challenged me as as my identity, as a friend, as a healer, as a clinician. All of these identities sort of converged as I was in relationship with her and I engaged with her and was there with her during the last few stages of her time here on this earth. And a lot of things came up, especially when she transitioned. Up until then, I would say it was survival mode. It was, okay, what do you need? How can I be there for you? How can I support you? Um, but also a very high vibe experience as well, not just the let me just go into servanthood mode, but also I would say I was in an altered state a little bit, engaging with her in a very high state of consciousness. Um, there wasn't a lot of fear. It's almost like that had been transmuted, or I wasn't experiencing a lot of fear at that point. It was more of being a support and offering a space for unconditional love and non-judgment. And I'm telling you, that was that was only God's grace. That was only because I was connected to a higher wisdom, a higher source, whether you call it the universe, the creator, or whatever you want to call it. Um, I was operating in that way. It wasn't until after her memorial service when I came down, as you will, from that state, and the grief took hold, and the feeling of loss, and the feeling of a death. Because even before then, you know how sometimes when you have an idea of something, like a thought, a belief, but then it transitions into an inner knowing, and that's what I would say I had experienced with her. An inner knowing of death is not the end. An inner knowing that where could you go? You are always here. You're just literally transitioning to another state of energy. And we are preparing you for that transition. Like literally, that is the mode that I was operating in. So I really didn't have any sort of fear or grief or anything that was coming up for me in that moment. But it wasn't until after the memorial service is when this profound sense of loss came over me. And I felt like I came down from the heavenly realm, or that high vibration of just knowing that, she's not going nowhere, her spirit will always be here with us, to the reality of her not being, um, walking the earth with me anymore. And so when you're faced with that, what do you do? What does one do? There's not any books that can help you in the moment to sort of navigate that. Um, I literally sat with the feelings. I gave myself permission to have those feelings, uh, gave myself compassion, and invited my community and my tribe. That's something that I talk about over and over again on this podcast. We're not meant to walk these things alone. We are meant to walk them in community. And a lot of times we're missing that communal element of grief, of ritual that helps us process the the phases of grief. And so I invited my community, my friends. I talked about these mixed emotions that were rising up for me around, feeling that I could have done more, that I wasn't enough, that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't show up for her the way I was supposed to. Now, mind you, before all of this happened, I was good. There was no lack. There was no thoughts of not enoughness. As I'm engaging with her, I feel like I am completely in line with what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to show up. And so when those thoughts and those feelings finally did hit me, I knew that I needed support. I knew that I needed my village to come in and be that, almost like that voice of reason, not in a toxic positivity way, because that energy can feel like trash, where it's like, I'm going to devalue your experience of, these feelings that you're having, and say, no, just think about, it's all for the greater good, and everything happens for a reason. And, all these, what can seem like platitudes when you're in the depths of your grief. I was blessed to have friends and family offer support. And what that looked like was allowing space for me to express my feelings, validate them as information, and then lovingly offer what they knew was truth, which is, you know, your intentions are always good, right? And your love is always big. and your support is always on time, So just leaning into what they knew and what the truth was just like a healing balm for me when all the doubt and all the fear surfaces when you are experiencing grief. And so I wanted to investigate this a little bit more because I just wasn't expecting the depth of grief. I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect to feel sort of disconnected with life in a way for a while. I would say the first month or so after she passed, there was a sort of fog and a feeling a little disconnected. Um, Everything sort of had a little gray tint on it, right? And again, I'm just curious. I'm like, what is this about? Um, I loved her dearly. We were getting extremely close. I joked with her and I said, "You were a friend that I prayed for, and the one of the first friends I actually prayed for, and God sent me you because I was going through a transition myself, and I was like, man, God, can you please send me some friends who sort of think like me right now and are kind of in the same vibe with me right now." And she came along. And so I knew that her death was more about what was happening for me too. Um, it was almost like it was an identity shift that was happening. So grief being not just about death, but about change, about how our identities shift, about how roles will be shifting, about how we deal with endings and beginnings. And so through this process, and I will say, it was basically the whole summer, I was gaining clarity on what actually was going on in the process. You know, this identity of what kind of friend I wanted to be came up, right? You know, does a friend support at all costs, right? Does a friend um, express their own concerns about a situation? Like, what is the definition of a friend, and what kind of friend do I want to be? What's the definition of a healer, and what kind of healer do I want to be? What's the definition of a clinician, and what type of clinician do I want to be? Um, what's the definition of a mother, and what kind of mother do I want to be? Like, literally, as I'm reflecting on these deep feelings that are arising during this period of grief, these roles and my idea of how I fit into these roles were coming up. And I was having questions about it. And I allowed that to happen. I allowed myself to have an open, honest, curious conversation with myself about myself. And it was literally through the lens of grieving this other person. And so it's just important for us to take note of when we experience a loss and we experience a change, for us to not only be aware of sort of how it's affecting us externally, right? The obvious losses of, okay, now I got to be differently. Oh, I'm going to miss her. But also there's an internal shift and change that's occurring. There is a death of something about you within you that's occurring, and to be open and honest with and allow whatever needs to shift, to change, to evolve, to do that necessary work is part of the grieving process and a necessary part of the healing process. And so a lot of times I feel like we get afraid when that happens. Nobody likes change. Humans, we literally resist change on the regular. And so the very process of going through grief will literally ignite in us these fear signals where our ego is trying to keep us safe and keep the status quo. Like, no, 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 no. Like, you need to stay the same and you need to, but because we are experiencing that grief, we know that we can't go back. It's forced upon us. It is literally a forced evolution because we are literally not the same person than before that loss, as before that loss. And so there's only one way, and that's through. It's only one way, and it is through. And we just have to get the courage, have the right people, friends, support groups, therapists, um, a sacred healing team on your side, rooting for you as you um, navigate that loss. It brings to mind the psalm that says, um, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me." And that's what grief feels like. It feels like you're literally walking into the valley of the shadow of the death because there is literally a loss and a death happening in so many levels. And fear comes, you know. I talked about that earlier. Fear comes because of that change, because of that loss. But it's not necessary to let that fear overtake us as long as we continue to connect with the light of connecting to our higher selves, connecting to God, connecting to our friends, the love of our loved ones, and our family, our healing team. And so we can connect to that safety. When we get fear signals, we can connect with security signals. And both of these emotions, fear and grief, they are inviting us to feel more deeply. It's data points. Feel more deeply, not less, not numb out, not avoid, not stuff it down, right? It's an invitation to feel more deeply, and you feel already so broken. You feel already so like, how can I go on? Like those feelings. But as I was walking through that over these past few months, I realized that this invitation to go deeper, to listen, it was part of an initiation. It was a part of clarity to understanding myself more, to understanding, oh, I literally still think of myself in this particular way as a nurse practitioner, right? And I have this identity and I'm attached to it. And when, I don't comply with what they say a nurse practitioner should do, I feel bad. I feel guilty. I feel shame. Or, oh, I still have this idea of what it means to show up as a friend. A friend has to tell it like it is, right? And when I don't do that, I feel a little bad. I feel a little guilty. And it's like, this awareness gave me clarity and it gives me power to decide, well, do I still want to have that be the defining factor of these roles for me? Do I want to still be a nurse practitioner that abides by those sort of outdated modes? Do I want to be a friend who is not adaptable and versatile and can hold space non-judgmentally for friends, um, and show up in a way that's both aligned for me and for them. So literally walking through this discomfort and unease is literally an initiation and a refinement process for us to become more of our true authentic self. Because the more that you can see those deep, dark, shadowy parts of ourselves, the more we can gain clarity, the more we can become empowered, and the more we can literally choose how we want to show up and how we want to be. But we can't be scared of the feelings. We can't be scared of the grief. We have to literally, with courage, walk through that valley. Hmm. So that is literally what I've been experiencing this summer. These emotions, how they are literally coming up for me. And with compassion, I literally have been uncovering so much layered, deep, very shadowy, feelings around loss. And having to remind myself about, again, being gentle with myself, but regulating my nervous system. Because these feelings, they are supercharged, man. And when these feelings come up, they are associated with a lot of thought patterns, I've noticed. So I got the body sensations going on, got the thought patterns going on. And so what was really crucial is to regulate my nervous system around them. I mean, this summer I was completely um tied to my weighted blanket. And I know it's summer in Atlanta. I still had that weighted blanket. If you have not discovered the healing power of the wonderful weighted blanket, I challenge you. Get yourself a weighted blanket. If you can't go all in to the whole weighted blanket situation, get a weighted shawl. That can be your put your pinky toe in and test out the power of having sort of that wraparound feeling. It's almost like getting a hug. Mm, and getting a hug. And that weight is so nourishing and so regulating to your nervous system. So me and that weighted blanket was like this, two peas in a pod. And very, very gentle with myself with regards to commitments. Typically, the summer is really high energy for us. Um, we reserve that time to do a lot of family stuff together and for me, I did do a lot of family stuff. It was fun. It was just like, yes. But I also wanted to make sure that I carved out time for myself on a regular basis, weekly basis, a few minutes a day to check in with my emotional body, which was telling me, which was communicating with me so much this summer. And I knew it was a direct um, reflection of what I had just gone through with that loss. And so it was an opportunity to just check in with my emotional body. And it wasn't that I was just like down in the dumps every day, but like I said, a regular practice with regulating my nervous system. I personally use tapping as a modality to keep my body grounded, to keep my emotions sort of not to keep my emotions from doing anything, but when emotions do arise and they're very strong and very intense, using tapping the collarbone, tapping the jaw as methods of bringing your awareness back to your body. It's such a foundational grounding practice. And I invite you all to, be curious and try out some of these practices, especially for those going through loss and grief. Your body is a safe place. It's a safe harbor. It's as safe as the earth itself. To be there for you as that supportive element when your emotions seem all over the place and your thoughts seem all over the place. Your body can be your rock, and connecting with it through exercises like breath work and exercises like tapping. EFT, emotional freedom technique, is the sort of official word for it in modern day, but it's ancient, you know. Um, I do a practice where I literally will tap gently on my chest with my fists in sort of a drumming way to literally connect with like my heartbeat, to feel the vibrations in my chest. And it's so comforting. And our ancestors did this. Our ancestors did this in ritual. They used their body as percussion instruments to connect with the vibration of being a body, a soul and a body on this planet, on this literal rock hurling into space in patterns and speeds that, we are just in awe of. And so literally it it has just been such a gift for me to go through this summer and be able, through pain and grief and loss, to reconnect with myself, reconnect with my body, evaluate some shadowy emotions that come up, some low vibration. Remember the glorious time that I spent with my friend in the last few months of her life, in a very high vibe way. The healing that she expressed to me, emotional healing, healing past ancestral hurts, family hurts, um, it's just being able to be a witness to see that it's not all about a cure. And yeah, we all want the cure. We all want to believe that, longevity is available to us and that will be something that we experience. But as we all know, life does not always pan out in that direction, and longevity is not necessarily promised to all of us. And so, how can we make meaning? How can we see the gifts in the people who are in our lives for such a short time? You know, um, I think about when young people die and you hear that, gone too soon, right? And it feels appropriate, but also for me, at least, when I think about my friend being gone too soon, I also, on the flip side, think about, okay, what's the meaning of just how precious her life has been, have being only here for 37 years, right? What a gift to have thrown yourself into what you believed in wholeheartedly, um, lived a life, giving life as a beautiful mother, as a beautiful friend, collaborator, a light, and having that cemented, having that cemented in the perception of so many people that she touched. And so, I don't know if if she had been here longer with us, would that have had the same effect on us? I don't know. But what I do know is that I appreciate um, the gifts that she offered in her with her life, and I will continue to like always remember. It is now stamped on me, our experience together, and I'm forever changed because of it. Um, I think about this metaphor like gold refined in fire. Our fear and grief burn away illusions and reveal the essence of who we are. And it's so true. It literally forces you, if you allow it to burn away all sort of old and outdated beliefs about who you once were. And it's a fresh start to decide, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? How do I want to heal? How do I want to use my creative ability to make meaning of my life right now? Because the truth is, we all are here for a finite period of time. We all are here for a finite time to learn what we need to learn, to make a mark on the world, to become more of this loving being, love of ourselves completely and wholly, and then out of that overflow, loving everyone that we come in contact with, and loving the earth and animals and everything in nature. So I I'm so glad and grateful that for the experience through the pain and all of it. And because every layer of that grief that I am honoring, I'm respecting in its own process is bringing me closer to who I truly am. And the saying that literally healing is us remembering and connecting to the part of us that was never broken to begin with. And grief is a pathway towards that remembering. So, as I wrap up, I just want to say, because this is one of the hugest lessons that I learned through this progress process. I knew this was going to be hard, so I feel the tears welling up. But because healing is not about fixing what's wrong, it's not about necessarily a cure. It's about remembering what's whole, connecting to what's whole um, throughout that process. And for some of us, that may not mean a cure for us. You know, what does, how, how would life be different if in your current situation you decided, I'm going to heal and I'm going to live my life, and I surrender the idea that anything is different about that situation? Let's say, for instance, you were diagnosed with cancer. We're in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we are focused on literally breast cancer awareness. And so, what does it mean for those of us who are experiencing cancer? What does it mean to live life now? What choices would you make differently? How would you choose to heal? How would you choose to take care of yourself, love yourself, honor yourself, your mind, honor your body, honor your emotions? How would you choose to do that? And surrender to any other idea of, some future out there, but be grounded in the present moment. I know that's how I want to live, because we really don't, like, to be honest, let's remember we do not control the future. We can keep hope in our hearts, right? Knowing that um, their hope for that love will prevail, hope that, for great futures for our children and our children's children. But really, the future is now. And if we ever want to materialize that future, we have to take the gold that is right in front of us, which is the present moment and the authority and the power to choose to love, to choose to live, to choose to, in the midst of being ill, see yourself whole as a whole person. You are not breast cancer. You are not sickness. You are not your grief. But in the midst of that, engaging with life, with curiosity, however you may show up. This summer, you think that There weren't times when I wasn't showing up as my best self. It maybe my daughter's was giving maybe a muted version of myself because, I was just kind of low that day. But I'm choosing to honor that. Yeah, I'm low, but also this is not the totality of my existence. And I want to engage with my kids during their summer break and experience fun and experience joy and be present with them. Like that intention was there. And so, however half hearted the outcome may have seemed, it was the very process of acknowledging one and deciding to identify with the whole of the situation that was the healing. That's when the healing was happening. So, how then shall we live, y'all? How then shall we live? I want to end with a short guided reflection. And I just want those of you that are going through breast cancer today, or maybe not, any sort of grief, any sort of sense of loss, sense of identity, any major changes that have come up for you, imagine yourself stepping forward through that cloud, that thick, dense cloud of the grief, of the loss, of the low vibrations. I want you to imagine the higher version of you stepping through that density, lighter, clearer, knowing that the fear and the grief it's not in it, they aren't enemies, but rather they're guides showing you where you can refine, where you can bring awareness, loving compassion and awareness so that you can gain power, gain awareness and consciousness. Um, so it's an opportunity for you to engage in pain. I know it sounds bad, right? Pain. Oh, nobody wants pain. We live in a culture that's built around avoiding pain, numbing pain. Nobody wants pain. But pain is information and data. And if we're just curious enough and patient enough and supported enough to be able to see the gift in pain, um, and that wholeness isn't the absence of it. Wholeness is not the absence of pain, but the presence of love, even in the middle of it. And so I wish for everybody today to be able to experience that love, no matter what the situation that you're currently going through, whether you are in the middle of treatment, whether you are experiencing grief, experiencing the love that's in the midst of that pain, because it's there. It really is. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me for this episode of Meds and Magic. I will see you next time. Thank you.